The evening sky was lit with a spectacular display of lights, the likes of which Jack Mercer had never seen. As he stood in the field behind his family's farm, what he initially mistook for a meteor shower quickly descended into chaos. The serene night exploded into a barrage of alien ships piercing the atmosphere, their intentions unclear until the first missiles struck. "Dad, you seeing this?" Jack called out, his voice tight with rising panic. His father, a retired Air Force pilot, stood beside him, his face set in grim lines. "This isn't right, Jack. Those aren't friendly." The ground shook as distant explosions bloomed on the horizon, painting the night with an ominous glow. Jack's heart raced, the reality setting in. "We need to warn the others. This looks like an invasion." Without waiting for a response, Jack sprinted towards the house, grabbing the old CB radio. His fingers worked frantically to tune into any frequency carrying human voices. "Mayday, Mayday. This is Jack Mercer from Clearwater County. We are under attack. Unknown hostiles. I repeat, we are under attack." His voice broke through the static as he tried to reach anyone who could hear him. From the living room, his father barked orders into his cell phone, trying to reach his contacts from his Air Force days. "We need immediate air support at these coordinates." "Yes, it's an attack. No, I don't know who, but they're not from here." Jack's brother Sam burst through the door, panting. "The town's a mess, Jack. They hit the plaza and it's bad. Really bad. We gotta do something." Jack grabbed his jacket and keys. "Get to the shelter, Dad. Sam, come with me. We need to help get people out of town." The brothers jumped into Jack's truck, speeding towards town. As they drove, the sky lit up again, this time closer, more personal. A direct hit to the nearby water tower sent a shuddering boom through the air, debris scattering across the road. "Look out!" Sam yelled, pointing ahead. Jack swerved, narrowly missing a chunk of twisted metal. As they approached the town, the scale of devastation became apparent. Buildings were ablaze, screams echoed in the distance, and the air was thick with smoke and fear. Pulling up near the plaza, Jack and Sam jumped into action, pulling people from the rubble. Each rescue was a small victory, but the enemy was relentless. More ships descended, their sleek, dark forms a stark contrast against the fiery chaos they wrought. "Jack, we can't stay here!" Sam shouted over the roar of another explosion. "It's a death trap." "We're not leaving anyone behind," Jack retorted, dragging a wounded man towards the truck. Just then, an elderly man stumbled towards them, his clothes singed, his expression haunted. "They came out of nowhere," he gasped. "No warning, no demands, just fire and death." Jack's jaw tightened as he helped the man into the back of the truck. "Stay with him, Sam. I'll go back for more." As Jack turned to head back into the fray, a large shadow loomed overhead. An alien ship, larger than the others, hovered directly above the plaza. Its sides opened, revealing rows of weapons poised to fire. In that moment, Jack's decision was made. He would not stand idly by while his home was destroyed. This was his line in the sand. With a determined look, he picked up a fallen piece of rebar and hurled it with all his might towards the ship. The metal clanged harmlessly against its hull, but it was a symbol of defiance. Jack turned back to Sam, shouting, "We need to fight back. Organize. Do whatever we can. We're not letting them take our home without a fight." As they drove away, loaded with survivors, Jack looked back at the burning town. This was just the beginning. He didn't know how they would do it, but he knew one thing for sure. They would fight. The sun rose over a landscape marred by smoldering ruins and shattered lives. In a secluded mountain base, makeshift tents dotted the terrain, a temporary sanctuary for those who had fled the Krelian onslaught. Jack Mercer moved among the survivors, a figure of quiet determination, assessing their needs and strengths. "Jack, we've got about 30 more coming in from the south," reported Mike, a fellow ex-soldier who'd taken to organizing their logistics. "We'll need to set up another sector for them." Jack nodded, glancing over a digital map glowing on a tablet. "Make it happen, Mike, and check our supplies. We can't afford to run low." As Jack and Mike planned the camp's expansion, a new arrival caught Jack's attention. The man was lean, with a haunted look in his eyes, but he moved with the assurance of someone trained to fight. "You new here?" Jack approached him, extending a hand. "I'm Jack Mercer." The man shook it firmly. "Evan Carter. I was a pilot like you. Heard you were setting up a resistance. Figured I'd find a way to be useful." Jack's eyes narrowed slightly in interest. "We need people with skills. You familiar with Krelian tech at all?" Evan nodded. "Enough to be dangerous. Their tech took out my squadron in minutes. I've been pulling apart what scraps I could find ever since. Good, Jack said. We're planning something big. We can use someone who knows their way around enemy tech. The two men walked towards a large tent that served as their command center. Inside, a mix of digital and analog equipment buzzed with activity. People shouted over radios and maps plastered the walls, marked with various notes and strategies. Jack led Evan to a table where several others were huddled around a layout of the city. This is where we hit them next. Jack pointed at a strategic point on the map. They've set up a forward operating base. We take that, we disrupt their supply lines. A burly man with a scar across his face looked up from the map. It's heavily guarded, Jack. We need a solid plan, not just guts. That's why Evan is here, Jack replied. He's going to help us figure out how to take down their defenses. Evan leaned over the map, tracing his finger along the perimeter of the alien base. They use a triphasic shield generator. I think I can rig up something to disrupt it, but I'll need some parts, specifically from their downed crafts. Jack turned to another man who had been quietly taking notes. Tom, you and your team up for a little scavenging mission? Tom, a former engineer, nodded with a grim smile. You bet. Just tell me what you need. As plans were forged and roles assigned, Jack felt a sense of camaraderie building among the group. These were not soldiers by career, but by circumstance, united under a common cause. The energy in the room was palpable, a mixture of fear, determination, and an unspoken bond of trust. We strike at dawn 2 days from now, Jack announced, his voice steady. Prepare your teams, check your gear. We're not just defending anymore, we're taking the fight to them. As the meeting disbanded, Jack pulled Evan aside. Thanks for stepping up, Evan. We need all the help we can get. Evan's response was simple, a nod of understanding. We all lost something, Jack. I'm just looking to take back a little of what was mine. Jack watched as the camp stirred to life, a hive of activity as people prepared for the impending attack. This was more than just a military operation. It was a statement. Humanity would not go quietly. They would stand, they would fight, and they would survive. Under the shroud of pre-dawn darkness, Jack Mercer and his team of volunteers geared up for the critical mission ahead. The plan was simple, yet daring. Infiltrate the Krelian forward base and disable their shield generator, opening the way for a larger assault. Evan Carter's insight into Krelian technology was their ace in the hole, potentially shifting the balance in this desperate struggle. Jack checked his gear one last time, adjusting his makeshift body armor. He turned to Evan, who was tinkering with a compact device filled with scavenged alien components. Is that going to work? Jack asked, a hint of skepticism in his voice. Evan didn't look up as he responded, his focus unwavering. It'll work. It jams their shield frequency based on the scraps we've collected. Just need to get it close enough. Let's make sure it gets there, then. Jack clapped Evan on the shoulder, then addressed the rest of the squad, a mix of determined faces, some hardened by previous encounters, others green but resolute. Keep it tight and watch each other's backs. We do this right. We get everyone home. They moved out, navigating through the ruins of once familiar streets, now just ghostly corridors framed by destruction. As they approached the target, the early morning silence was punctuated by the distant hum of Krelian patrols, a stark reminder of the enemy's presence. Tom, their engineer, whispered through the comm. Visual on 2 sentries, northeast tower. Looks standard patrol. Jack signaled to 2 of his team who quietly detached to neutralize the threat. Moments later, 2 soft thuds confirmed their success. They were in. Evan, carrying the crucial device, stayed close to Jack as they made their way to the base's perimeter. The alien architecture was imposing, geometric structures looming like monoliths against the dim sky. Reaching the shield's generator wasn't going to be easy. The open ground leading to it was a no-man's land of security measures. Jack eyed the path ahead, then nodded to Evan. Time to see if your magic works. Evan set the device down, adjusting its settings before activating it. A low, pulsing vibration started, almost inaudible. Then, without warning, the shimmering barrier of the shield flickered and faded. Go, 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 Jack urged, leading the charge. They sprinted across the open ground, hearts pounding as the shield sputtered, trying to compensate for the interference. Reaching the generator, they placed charges, setting a tight timer. Clear out, Jack commanded, and they retreated with precision, diving for cover as the charges exploded in a brilliant cascade of sparks and debris. The generator crumbled, its destruction a silent scream in the breaking dawn. The operation was a success, but there was no time to celebrate. "Move out! Head to the rendezvous point," Jack ordered, leading his team back through the labyrinthine streets, evading increasing Krelian patrols alerted by the explosion. They reached their extraction point just as the sun crested the horizon, bathing the city in a harsh, revealing light. The team was weary, but alive, their mission accomplished. As they loaded into the waiting vehicles, Jack looked back at the smoking remains of the Krelian base. This victory was more than tactical. It was symbolic. They had shown that the Krelians could be beaten, that human ingenuity and courage could hold its own against alien technology. It was a message Jack intended to spread across every remaining human enclave. Fight back and fight smart. As they drove back to camp, the rising sun seemed to reflect the newfound hope in Jack's eyes. Today they had turned the tide. Tomorrow, they would begin to reclaim their world. The success of the previous mission reverberated through the human resistance, a surge of momentum that Jack Mercer was determined to capitalize on. As he planned the next phase of operations at their mountain base, the room buzzed with a renewed sense of purpose. Jack stood at the center, maps and digital screens arrayed around him, each displaying potential targets. "Listen up," Jack began, his voice commanding attention. "The Krelians are reinforcing their positions in response to our last strike. We've got a narrow window to hit them again before they settle in." Evan Carter stepped forward, pointing to a cluster of markers on the screen. "Satellite intel suggests a large squadron is regrouping over the Atlantic. It's a mixed fleet, probably preparing for a counterstrike." Jack's eyes narrowed. "That's our target. We take out that squadron, we cripple their ability to retaliate quickly. It's a risk, but it's one we need to take." The room filled with murmurs of agreement and apprehension. Aerial combat was a different beast, requiring precision and a bit of luck. Jack turned to his assembled pilots, a small but skilled group who had been refining their flying techniques against the Krelians. "We'll be flying in 2 waves, Jack explained. "First wave will engage and draw them out. Second wave, you're the hammer. Hit them hard and fast while they're focused on the first group." Among the pilots was a young flyer named Liam, whose brother had fallen in the first days of the invasion. He caught Jack's eye, nodding firmly. "We'll give them hell, sir." The pilots dispersed to prep, while Jack and Evan reviewed the final details of the electronic warfare support that would be crucial for jamming Krelian communications during the battle. Hours later, as the sun touched the horizon, the human pilots took to the skies in their retrofitted aircraft, a motley array of machinery united by human ingenuity and desperate courage. Jack piloted the lead aircraft, setting the course towards the vast blue battleground above the Atlantic. As they approached the designated coordinates, the Krelian squadron materialized on the horizon, their ships sleek and deadly against the backdrop of clouds. The first wave of human pilots dove into the fray, missiles and gunfire slicing through the sky. "Engage at will. Remember, keep them busy," Jack instructed over the comm, diving his plane into a steep descent to draw enemy fire. The sky erupted in chaos, streaked with contrails and explosions. Below, the second wave, led by Liam, waited for the signal. As the Krelians focused on Jack's group, Liam led his team upwards. "Now hit them hard," he shouted. The second wave surged forward, exploiting the openings in the Krelian defenses. The battle intensified, a deadly dance above the churning ocean. Jack's heart raced as he maneuvered through enemy fire, every evasion a brush with death. Then, with a well-timed volley from Liam's group, the flagship of the Krelian squadron took a direct hit, a critical blow that sent it spiraling towards the sea. The impact was the turning point, sending the alien forces into disarray. "Pull back! Regroup!" Jack ordered, as his pilots used the chaos to their advantage, picking off the remaining Krelian ships one by one. As the battle waned, the sky littered with debris, Jack allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. They had won, at great cost, but the victory was clear. The Krelians' aerial threat over the Atlantic had been drastically reduced, giving humanity a vital strategic advantage. Returning to base, the pilots were met with cheers and solemn remembrance for the fallen. Jack joined in the camaraderie but remained focused. Each victory was a step closer to reclaiming their planet, and he would not rest until the fight was won. In the aftermath of the aerial victory, the Resistance's morale was higher than ever, but Jack Mercer knew that momentum alone wouldn't reclaim their planet. The next move would need to be bolder, striking at the heart of the Krelian presence on Earth. Gathering his most trusted operatives in the war room, Jack laid out a map covered with satellite images and recon photos. "This is where we go next," he said, pointing to a fortified Krelian outpost located in what used to be a bustling city center. Evan Carter leaned over the table, scrutinizing the layout. "That's deep in enemy territory, Jack. It's a fortress surrounded by patrols and heavy artillery." Jack nodded, his expression grim. "Exactly, which is why we're going to infiltrate it. We take out their communications hub and we cripple their coordination for weeks, maybe longer. Evan, you're with me. Tom, you'll lead the diversion team. Create enough noise and they won't see us coming." Tom, a seasoned engineer whose expertise had become invaluable, nodded in agreement. "We'll keep them busy, Jack. You just make sure to get out in one piece." The plan was set. At dusk, 2 teams departed from the resistance base. Jack and Evan, accompanied by a small squad, headed directly for the outpost, while Tom's team moved to engage the enemy forces from the opposite direction. Navigating through the shadowy ruins, Jack's team moved silently, using the rubble for cover. Every step brought them closer to the heart of enemy operations, and the tension among them was palpable. As they neared the outpost, Evan pulled out a small device, a makeshift scanner he had rigged to detect electronic emissions. "We're close. The comm hub should be just beyond that wall," he whispered, pointing towards a heavily guarded gate. Jack surveyed the area, noting the patrol patterns. "Wait for my signal, then we move. Remember, silent and fast is the key here." Minutes felt like hours as they waited for the right moment. When a patrol turned away, Jack gave the nod, and they sprinted across the open ground to the shadow of the wall. Using grappling hooks, they scaled the wall quickly and efficiently, landing softly on the other side. They were in. The communication hub was a squat, armored building, bristling with antennas and guarded by only a few Krelians, who were quickly and silently neutralized by Jack's team. Inside, Evan went straight to work on the consoles, his fingers flying over the alien technology. Jack stood guard, watching the door, his weapon ready. "It's more complex than I thought," Evan muttered, sweat beading on his forehead as he bypassed layers of security protocols. "But I'm through the main firewall, planting the virus now." The virus, designed by the Resistance's tech team, would send false orders and scramble communications, sowing chaos among the Krelian forces. "Done," Evan finally breathed. "We need to move now." As they exited the building, the diversion created by Tom's team reached its peak, explosions and gunfire echoing in the distance, drawing Krelian forces away from Jack's position. They retraced their steps, moving quickly back towards the wall. Just as they were about to climb over, an alarm blared through the outpost, a harsh alien wail that sent a chill down Jack's spine. "Go, go, go," Jack urged, boosting Evan over the wall first before following. As they made their escape, the sound of chaos behind them mixed with the distant sounds of Tom's ongoing diversion. They regrouped with the rest of their squad in the ruins, hearts pounding, but spirits high. The mission was a success, but Jack knew the real impact would be felt in the coming days as the Krelians scrambled to regain control. For now, they had struck a critical blow, and as they made their way back to the base, the weight of their achievement began to sink in. Tonight, they had changed the course of the war. In the days following their covert strike on the Krelian communications hub, the effects of their sabotage rippled through the alien forces, leading to disorganized movements and fractured commands. Jack Mercer used this opportunity to strengthen the Resistance's foothold, focusing on a strategic location known as New Hope, a city symbolic of human endurance and defiance. Jack and his leadership team gathered in the command tent, poring over maps and intelligence reports. "New Hope will be our bulwark," Jack declared, his finger tracing the city's perimeter on the map. "If we fortify it, we can make it a base for future operations and a safe haven for civilians." Evan Carter nodded, adding, "The Krelians are still reeling from the confusion. Now's the time to dig in and prepare for their counterattack." Preparations began at once. The Resistance recruited every able-bodied person, training them, not just in combat, but also in the logistics of maintaining a city under siege conditions. Engineers, under Tom's guidance, reinforced walls and erected barriers, while scouts monitored enemy movements. As the Krelians gradually regained their operational capabilities, they began to realize the strategic importance of New Hope. A massive assault was inevitable. Jack knew the first real test of their resilience was approaching fast. Weeks later, as a cold dawn broke over New Hope, the first signs of the Krelian offensive appeared. Dark shapes loomed on the horizon, a formidable fleet advancing towards the city. Jack climbed atop a makeshift watchtower, binoculars in hand, observing the approaching menace. "Positions, everyone!" Jack's voice echoed through the radios. The defenders scrambled to their posts, adrenaline surging as the enemy drew closer. The siege began with a barrage of heavy artillery, shaking the foundations of New Hope. But the city held strong, its defenses blunting the initial assault. Jack coordinated the defense from the front lines, directing fire teams and maneuvering reserves to plug breaches. "Keep those cannons firing, and medics, stay sharp," he commanded, ducking as a shell exploded nearby, sending concrete shards flying. Evan, leading a squad on the eastern flank, called in over the radio. "Jack, they're pushing hard on the east wall. We need reinforcements." "On it," Jack replied, signaling for 2 squads to support Evan's position. As he moved through the city, the tangible spirit of defiance from the citizens bolstered his resolve. They were fighting not just for survival, but for their future. Nightfall brought no respite. Instead, the Krelians intensified their assault, deploying ground troops to breach the city gates. Jack met them head-on, leading a countercharge that pushed the invaders back momentarily. Throughout the night, the battle raged. For every wall breached, humans reclaimed another. As dawn approached, weary but undeterred, Jack surveyed the battlefield. The Krelians, expecting an easy victory, had instead met a wall of human determination. By sunrise, the alien forces began to withdraw, their numbers too depleted to maintain the offensive. Jack stood atop the same watchtower, watching them retreat. New Hope had lived up to its name, standing firm against overwhelming odds. As the city's people emerged from their shelters, their cheers filled the air, a sound mixed with relief and victory. Jack, surrounded by his fellow fighters, felt a profound connection to these people and the city they had defended so fiercely. The Siege of New Hope was not just a military victory. It was a declaration that humanity would not be subdued. This victory would resonate, inspiring other enclaves and settlements to stand up, to fight back, and to hope. After the hard-won victory at New Hope, the human resistance was galvanized, ready to shift from defensive to offensive operations. Jack Mercer, feeling the tide of the war beginning to turn, planned a daring counterattack directly on the primary Krelian base on Earth. This base was not just a military outpost, but a symbol of Krelian dominance, a beacon they had used to project power over the entire region. "We've been on the back foot long enough," Jack stated firmly to his assembled commanders in the dimly lit war room. "Taking out their main base will not only disrupt their operations, but will also send a message. Earth is not theirs for the taking." Evan Carter, now a trusted advisor, chimed in, "The base's defenses are formidable. We've managed to salvage some of their technology from previous skirmishes. It's time we use it against them." Tom, responsible for logistics and engineering, laid out the plan for utilizing captured Krelian weapons. "We've retrofitted their energy cannons onto a few of our vehicles. It won't be a long fight if we do it right, so speed and surprise are our allies." The plan was set, and under the cover of darkness, Jack led a convoy of these modified vehicles towards the Krelian base, located in a valley flanked by steep mountains, a natural fortress. The resistance fighters were tense, aware that the success of this mission could very well determine the future of their struggle. As they approached the base, the night was eerily quiet. The first hint of dawn tinted the sky with gray as they neared their target. Jack gave the signal, and the convoy surged forward, breaking the silence with the roar of engines and the first blasts of the stolen Krelian cannons. The initial volley of energy blasts took the base's outer defenses by surprise, obliterating watchtowers and creating chaos among the Krelian ranks. Jack's forces pushed forward, exploiting the confusion. "This is it! Keep pushing!" Jack shouted over the din of battle, leading his team deeper into the heart of the base. The Krelians, recovering from their initial shock, began to mount a more organized defense, returning fire with deadly precision. Evan, coordinating the attack on the ground, directed the resistance fighters through the maze of alien structures. "Left flank, watch out. You've got a squad moving in on your position." His voice crackled through the comms. Jack, near the front line, ducked behind a fallen beam, swapping out his weapon's energy pack. Glancing around, he saw the resolve in the eyes of his fighters. They were tired, battered, but unbroken. After intense fighting, they reached the central command center, the heart of the Krelian operations. Jack and a small team breached the doors, entering amidst a haze of smoke and the sharp smell of ozone. Inside, they encountered stiff resistance, but the momentum was on their side. a fierce exchange of fire ensued until the last of the Krelian defenders was subdued. Jack and his team quickly set about planting explosives throughout the command center. As they retreated, Jack looked back at the base, a sprawling complex that had been a thorn in their side for too long. The explosives detonated in a series of brilliant, blinding flashes, reducing the command center to rubble. The ride back to New Hope was filled with a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. As they entered the city, the sun broke fully over the horizon, casting light on the faces of the people who came out to welcome their heroes. The fall of the Krelian base marked a turning point in the war. Humanity had not only survived, but had shown that it could reclaim its home, one battle at a time. Jack felt a profound sense of pride and responsibility as he addressed his people, vowing to continue the fight until Earth was free. The victory at the Krelian base had sent shockwaves through the alien ranks, creating discord and uncertainty among their forces. As the human resistance prepared for the inevitable final assault from the Krelians, Jack Mercer found himself reflecting on the long journey that had led them here. The last stand would take place where the conflict had first exploded, his hometown, the very place that had sparked his resolve. "We've come full circle," Jack mused, standing before a large tactical display in the command center. The map was illuminated with strategic points and troop deployments, outlining their defensive perimeter. "This is where we end it." Evan Carter, looking over some last-minute intelligence reports, nodded solemnly. "Satellite images show a significant buildup of Krelian forces just beyond the ridge. They're coming, Jack, and they're bringing everything they have." Jack turned to address his assembled commanders and soldiers, their faces a tapestry of determination and weariness. "This is more than just a battle for survival," he began, his voice resonant in the charged air. "This is about reclaiming our lives, our planet. We stop them here, we stop them for good." Preparations were swift and efficient. Barricades were reinforced, and weapons were distributed. Families were moved to underground shelters, while every able-bodied person was given a role in the defense. The air was thick with a mix of fear and defiance, a potent reminder of what they were fighting for. As the horizon began to lighten, the first distant booms of the Krelian advance echoed across the plains. Jack donned his combat gear, checking his weapons before taking his position at the front lines. "They're here," came the terse report over the radio. From his vantage point, Jack saw the advance. A tide of Krelian war machines and troops, their armor glinting under the rising sun. It was an imposing sight, but Jack felt an unshakable calm. He had faced them before and prevailed. The battle erupted as the two forces clashed. Energy blasts crisscrossed the battlefield, creating a deadly tapestry of light and destruction. Jack moved among his troops, directing fire, bolstering defenses, and lending his strength where it was needed most. As the day wore on, the Resistance's resolve held strong, but the Krelians were relentless. A critical breach in the eastern flank threatened to unravel their defenses. Jack, hearing the report, grabbed a squad of his best soldiers. "With me!" he shouted, leading them to the breach. Together, they fought fiercely, pushing the Krelians back, reclaiming the lost ground. Every step forward was paid for with a mix of grit and blood. Amidst the chaos, a towering Krelian commander emerged, cutting a swath through the defenders. Jack faced him, their battle a fierce dance of strategy and strength. Eventually, with a well-placed shot, Jack brought the commander down, his fall signaling a shift in the battle's momentum. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the battlefield, the Krelian forces began to falter. Their lines broke, retreating under the relentless pressure of the human resistance. The cheers and cries of victory began to rise among the human ranks, as they realized the tide had turned decisively in their favor. Jack, weary but elated, climbed atop a damaged tank, surveying the field. The Krelians were in full retreat, their invasion thwarted. "This is our world," Jack declared, his voice echoing across the battlefield. "And we have defended it with our courage, our blood, and our hearts." As night fell, the Resistance celebrated, their joy mixed with sorrow for the fallen. But above all, there was hope. A hope not just for survival, but for a future of peace. Jack walked through the fields of his reclaimed hometown, each step a testament to the journey they had all endured. They had fought, not just against an alien invader, but for the essence of humanity itself. Now, as peace finally descended, Jack knew the real work would begin, rebuilding what had been lost and moving forward into a new era.